Shtëpia është aty, ku zemra rreh, aty ku më presin sy të gëzuar me padurim, çdo herë që kthehem në vendin tim. Largimi është gjithmonë i vështirë, ndaj sigurohem të jem aty në ditët më të rëndësishme për ta. Me EasyPay dhe Ria Money Transfer, unë dërgoj para me tarifat më të lira kudo në Shqipëri.
Daja, po ti s'do vish për gjiklinjen time?
Nuk mund të vi dot sot, por të kam sjell një surprizë që do të pëlqej shumë.
Nuk ka gjë më të bukur se sa të gëzosh njerëzit e tu më të dashur. EasyPay dhe Ria Money Transfer dërgojnë para aty ku vërtet ka rëndësi.
Përshëndetje shikues të televizionit Albuquerque TV në Londër. Jemi në studiot e Londrës ku pikërisht sot kemi nda disa momente shumë të rëndësishme me lajmin më të fundit për vdekjen e Mbretereshes Elisabeth të dytën. Mbretresha Elisabeth ndroi jetë dje në moshën 96 vjeçare në vendin e saj të lindjes në Balmoral në Skoci. Për më se 70 vite ishte në shërbim të palodhshëm me dinjitet nder të plot për Britaninë e Madhe. Unë sot kam ftuar të ndajmë disa informacione, të ndajmë jetën e Mbretreshes Elisabeth me transmetuesin mbretëror, zotrion Ian Pelham Turner. Thank you, Ian, for joining me. I'm going to be introducing our public in Albanian a little bit about the history, about the Queen, and what she did for us. And then I will continue with you, with yourselves, to tell us a little bit more about what's going on at the moment with the procedures and policies about the Queens that passed away. Me Ian do të flasim në gjuhën angleze, por do të mundohemi të flasim edhe në gjuhën shqipe, të përkthejmë ato se çka është biseda jonë. Por së pari më lejoni të flas vetëm pagës një histori të vogël të mbretëreshës, të Mbretereshes Elisabeth. Ajo lindi me 21 prill 1926 në Londër. Babai i saj ishte Albert Duke of York dhe ishte djali i dytë i King George Pest. Mbretëresha ishte po ashtu e kishte edhe një motër, më të vogël, e cila ishte Princess Margaret Rose. Mbretëresha kishte një fëmijëri shumë të lumtur dhe kishte siguri e kujdes të veçantë nga prindërit. Po ashtu, kishte edhe një shans shumë të mirë dhe oportunitet t'ju jap dashuri qenëve dhe kuajve. Çdo gjë ndryshoi kur në dhjetor 1936 xhaxhai i saj Edward i teti, abdikoi që të martohet me Amerikanën Wallis Simpson, ku babai princesës Elisabeth të atëhershme u bë King George i gjashtë. Elisabeta dhe Margaret nuk vijuan në shkollë normale dhe ishin me mësime private në Buckingham Palace. Elisabeta gjatë luftës së dytë botërore ka qëndruar gjithë kohën në Windsor Castle. Pas përfundimit të luftës, ajo takohet dhe fejohet me princ Philip të Greqisë, ku me 19 nëntor të vitit 1947 ajo edhe u martua. Pas një viti të martesës, ata e sjellin në jetë Prince Charlesin. Me 6 shkurt 1952, princeza dhe burri i saj, Prince Filipi, ishin në udhëtime në Kenja si muaj i mjaltit, ku ata kaluan një muaj shumë të bukur, por ajo është ndërprer për shkak se papritmas morën lajmin që mbreti George i gjashti ka ndruar jetë. Në moshën 25 vjeçare, princeza Elisabeth u emërua si Mbretëresh Elisabeth e dyta, ku ishin kohërat më të vështira ekonomike për Britaninë. mungesa e bukës, misrit, racionet, por ajo arriti që Britaninë e Madhe për vite më të tjeshme të dërgoj drejt horizonteve të reja të inovacionit, diversitetit, zhvillimit të shkencës dhe teknologjisë, fuqisë ushtarake e diplomacisë. U dha pavarësinë shumë vendeve afrikano-aziatike të Commonwealthit. Për gjatë kohës si lidere që ishte frontit të saj në Commonwealth, kur hyrja aty ishin vetëm 5 shtete, ndërsa sot janë mbi 56 shtete të reja në Commonwealth. Ajo për gjatë 70 viteve në front kishte 15 kryeministër të Britanisë së Madhe, duke filluar nga Winston Churchill deri te Liz Truss, të cilën e përshëndeti mu para 2 ditëve kur edhe ajo me shëndet ishte shumë keq. Ian.
Yes.
I just talked a little bit the history of Queen Elizabeth II. We just saw her 2 days ago honoring the new Prime Minister,
Yes.
Liz Truss. And then less than 24 hours, we have a news that she passed away.
Yes.
Would you tell us what is happening now? Is been quite, not a surprise, but it's a surprise to see her live 2 days ago, standing, and now she's gone.
I think, first of all, a lot of people like myself, I am a royal broadcaster, so, you know, I work within the royal family circles as well. Nobody expected this to happen, first of all. The reports that we were getting back was that the Queen was becoming stronger. She was walking in hillsides again, sometimes with a stick, sometimes even without a stick, with her dogs. So it sounded as if the Queen was getting better. The mobility problems that she was facing seemed to be becoming less. So nobody was more shocked than myself that I was listening to reports by Liz Truss, our new Prime Minister, when suddenly the Speaker of the House of Commons interrupted Liz Truss, the Prime Minister, and stated that there had been a problem with Queen Elizabeth. And then obviously people like myself start darting to the phones, and we're getting calls from stations across the world as well, including this one, on what is actually happening at the moment. And then there was this silence. So we were getting behind the scenes reports from our different contacts to say that she had passed away, but it wasn't being officially stated. And so it really caused all sorts of issues. And I think the pressure in the end of the media across the world really sort of forced Buckingham Palace to actually sort of make a statement. And the statement is called Cascade.
Right, yeah.
So the cascade is that when the Queen died, Sir Edward Young, who is the Queen's private secretary, then has to inform the Prime Minister, Liz Truss. That's the first part of the cascade. Then that message is passed on to the Privy Council. The Privy Council are politicians, they're legal experts, they're members of the church in Great Britain. It's passed on to them for knowledge, and then it's passed on to political leaders. So that was the first stage of what actually physically happened. Then the announcement is allowed to be made, because then it's official that the Queen has died.
We have seen the announcement on television at the Buckingham Palace, only on a paper at the gates. Is that still one of the procedures? Because we haven't heard anybody coming that from a royal family saying she has passed away. It's just the paper on a gate.
Yes, it is. It's the official posting on the Buckingham Palace gates is the official way. So in Great Britain, and especially with the royal family, if something happens with the royal family, normally a birth or someone getting married, then it's posted on the palace gates. That is the traditional method of letting the people know what is going on at the same time. So it's one of the methods that start to happen. You've got to remember, this is a lot of tradition.
Yeah.
Some of the things that King Charles now has to do goes back to 1747.
When the Queen originally
Well,
has to announce.
1747 goes way back, way before the Queen was actually even born. And some of the laws that Charles now has to affirm to go back to 1747. He has to take these oaths. The oath of 1747 is to assure that the Church of Scotland Act will remain constant during his reign. He also has to affirm that he will keep the Protestant faith. And here is an interesting dilemma, because it was said at one time, and I'm really interested to see whether that's spread now, because you will know in Albania there is a Muslim religion just as much as there is a Christian religion.
Yeah.
And the reality is that Charles wanted the Declaration of Oath changed. So he wanted that he would keep the Protestant religion, but that he would be the defender of faith of all religions. So whether that is a change that is going to be accepted or not, that's one of the things that we're interested in seeing at the moment, because his belief is that he's always had an interest in other faiths. He's very spiritual himself as well, and he likes really spiritual religions at the same time. So, and I think his thought process is to bring, as in Albania, which is brilliantly done in Albania, where all faiths are accepted, within the country itself.
We just heard live a few minutes ago King George, which now I have to get used to saying King Charles, sorry, I kept making a mistake again. Okay. Prince Charles, King Charles now. What did you think about his speech on everything that is going on?
I think it was a very well rehearsed speech. Speeches like that are not what we call ad hoc. They don't come like that.
Yeah.
That has been written beforehand. So whether or not he's been rehearsing that speech,
he delivered quite well.
He delivered it extremely well. And it was done with heart. I don't decry our new king at all. I think he has got great heart. He has got great vision. And he wants, I think, to make real changes in this world, especially for Great Britain as well, in ecological terms and a lot of other interests that he has interest in, some of them coming from his father, some of them coming from the Queen. So it'll be interesting to see what changes he will try to make, but at the same time, now that he is King Charles III, even I have to
yes,
have a problem, and I
yeah.
do this all the time. King Charles III, he has to officially remain away from politics. This has always been one of the problems with Charles, is that he really has delved into politics as well and tried to persuade politicians on certain principles, especially on ecology. And so now, no, he's not allowed to do this anymore. And he apparently has taken this affirmation now to say he will not any longer be involved in any political issues.
Let's go back to Queen and talk about her early childhood. I just mentioned in Albanian that she was a child that grew up in a very good family, obviously, and she had a very happy childhood.
Yes.
She had lots of love and opportunities to share the love with dogs and horses.
Yes.
What do you know about that?
Okay, I mean, there's lots of stories. So I'd like to take you back to when the Queen was just 2 years old.
Right, yes.
Now, about 8 or 9 years ago, I was researching photography readiness for Prince George being born. And one day I was in a bookshop and there was this book of royal secrets and royal projects and history of the royal family. And I love old books. So I was thumbing through this book, and then out fell this photograph. And it was a photograph of Princess Elizabeth, 2 years old, on a beach, building sandcastles. And for me, I'm thinking she already knew in her heart that perhaps one day she was going to live in a castle.
And she's going to rule the
And,
country.
she's going to rule. So that picture became world famous and went right across the world. And we tried to discover who had actually taken that photograph, but we never really discovered who took the photograph. But then moving on, so during the war, Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret stayed in Windsor Castle because it was much safer for them there. They could protect it. But as very, very young children, they heard the clip-clop of hooves on the cobblestones outside of some of the working horses. And they became fascinated, and they used to rush to the window every night with the clip-clop of hooves, and that got their first interest in horses. And then Princess Elizabeth then had horse toys, and she had this whole farm of toys that were horses as well. So that's what sort of really grew her interest. And then her father, when I think Princess Elizabeth was 4 or 5 years old, gave her her first pony. She was captivated by horses from there on in. And as I know, ever since, during that period, any time that the royal family can be near a horse, they love it. It's their seventh heaven.
We have got to use seeing Queen Elizabeth in horse riding, even at the age that we will think that you would sit down and relax, but till very late, probably 2 or 3 years ago, she's been riding her horses, and we could see the love and the passion she has for them. Also her beloved dogs. She has 5, 6 of them.
Well, there's. I was saying to one of the channels I was working with today, there's a euphemism, which is it's a means of actually saying that the Queen is coming. So the household, the people who run the household, used to say, "Not in front of the corgis." Not in front of the corgis. And one of the first times I was at Buckingham Palace, I get pulled over by a footman who's dressed in livery, old-fashioned livery. And he whispers in my ear, "Not in front of the corgis." What? Not in front of the corgis? What do you mean, not in front of the corgis? And then I realised what he was saying was that was the euphemism to say the Queen is coming down the corridor.
Oh, this is what we learned.
So her love of corgis was one thing. The love of horses, again, was a passion. She was a racehorse owner. She used to love winning. You know, so the biggest passion of there's this famous scene where one day the Queen was watching television and she is suddenly realizing that her horse is winning a race at Ascot, and she runs out onto the balcony and cheers the horse on as well. She can't believe it that her horse has actually won one of the prime races at Ascot Week. So she had a love of horses, and she used it to her advantage. So sometimes when she was asked to be residing with, say, presidents of America, so there's a very famous time when President Reagan, Ronald Reagan, who was the former cowboy in the first place, he rode out with her one morning on horses at Windsor. And there was this very famous photograph of the two of them riding along together as well. And I think, you know, she was a very good horsewoman, because several years ago, when she was at the Trooping the Colour, she used to ride side saddle, Trooping the Colour, down the Mall to where Trooping the Colour happened each year. And someone started firing a gun at her, but it was with not with real bullets, but and the horse that she was riding really almost reared up, and she managed just to keep control of the horse and just rode on.
That is amazing, because I would have thought just side riding is just to sit is difficult, let alone ride in it.
It is a style.
It is something probably she
I've
has
only
been-
ever ridden a horse once, and it left me crippled for days. So
Well, I know that feeling. It has happened to me as well. Ian, let's talk a little bit about difficulties she had during the period she led the Great Britain. Let's go back to 1992, when we saw in so many interviews that she said, this is a year that I wouldn't want to remember or talk about it.
Yes.
Where so many things happened, but she managed even then to be strong and give that positive energy that we can do it together no matter what we face in life.
That's right. At that time, she was facing several problems. Obviously, Windsor Castle had
Yes.
caught on fire, and this had been caused by heaters or lights catching fire to curtains at Windsor Castle, and they didn't realise how hot these lights were, and caught the curtains, and that's what caused the blaze at Windsor Castle itself. And at that time, Prince Andrew was the leading light and managed to save a lot of the treasures that were actually in Windsor Castle itself as well. Arinus Oribus was the title that she gave.
I remember that, yeah.
And this was the most horrible year, that had happened to her. And I think at that time as well, there were talks of divorces. There was a lot of activity going on as well. And I think the reality at that stage was that, and she was also losing her voice at that time as well. She was having to give this speech, and everybody felt so sorry for the Queen, because, her beloved Windsor Castle had got major problems, and I think it cost something like about £70 million to restore Windsor Castle. She got, I think, divorce problems, within the family itself as well. And so there were all these distractions. The reality with the royal family is continuity.
Yes.
They don't like things like fires. They don't like things like divorces, because it takes away from the values of continuity for a royal family. So Emma Auribulus was the problem that she sort of faced that year.
It's been even years after that with Princess Diana and a divorce that they went through with Prince Charles at that time, and also the death of Diana. What do you remember from that time?
Well, I remember a lot because, one of the first major photographic commissions I did as a commissioned royal photographer was to take the first Christmas photographs of Prince William with Diana and Charles at Kensington Palace. And that really sort of made my name in the royal circles, and the following year I was one of the royal photographers of the year, with that imagery as well. I think at that time there was all sorts of changes going on. I remember about a year later, I used to do events behind the scenes with the royal family. And one night I was asked to, at one of the palaces, I was asked to become the official photographer, and there were 600 people had turned up for an event. And they wanted me to get as many photographs of then Prince Charles shaking the hands of people. But because there were so many people, it was divided into 6 rooms around the palace. And about 10 days beforehand, the equerry, the person in charge of the event, led me round all these different rooms. And I said, I'm never going to remember this, because I had to be 30 seconds in front of Prince Charles. So if I went into the wrong room, I'd be behind him. And I'm thinking, this is going to be impossible, you know. And he said, it's the only time I've ever been called son. You know, he said, son, he said, if you're running down a corridor, yep, and you see a room with a door that is closed, he said, there's a rule in this palace. And I said, what's the rule? He said, don't open it, because you don't know who you will find behind it. And that was Camilla coming back.
Oh God, yeah.
That was Camilla coming back. So there was this time, and it's you know, I worked a lot with Diana, and unfortunately I think I took the last photographs at an event behind the scenes of Diana before she died. So it was an event in itself. What do I remember? I do remember something, and this is, I'm not, you know, the reality was that the night she died, I knew she had died. I was told at midnight that she had died. But I was going on my first holiday in 18 months, and at that time I was married. And we were going to go to America, and the phone was ringing. And I thought, if I pick the phone up, that's it. My holiday is over because they will say, you can't go on your holiday. We want everybody to come in. Anyway, so we decided, no, I'm not going to answer the phone. I know what's happened, but no, and so I went to America, and we flew to America, and we came into Florida. And as I'm walking down the ramp at Tampa Airport to go and get the car, there were these TV crews running up the ramp, and I'm thinking, we've cut into someone's, you know, view of someone, you know, that they want to interview, and they all came racing up to me. And my agent at that time had sold my rights for the funeral to Good Morning America. So I had to do the funeral for Good Morning America. In America. And it was very unfortunate because I managed to get a white shirt and a dark tie, but I was wearing Bermuda shorts, and I was saying to the cameraman, for goodness sake, do not do a full length of me, because this is going to destroy the whole thing.
Prior to the pandemic time you already had experience how to cover yourself, just be presentable on these type of events.
Well, here during the pandemic at ALB, we used to do a TV show. I used to do a TV show called Stay Home, Stay Happy.
Yeah.
And the reality was that the upper part of my body was clothed, and the lower part of my body was probably pajama bottoms. You know,
like we all did. We got used to it on televisions, from homes and everywhere. But it was good. We got in touch and in contact with whatever and whoever we needed to get informations done.
Yes.
What is the procedure now? Would you tell us a little bit more? How is the procedure of the funeral going to go? What we will have to expect in days to come till the funeral and afterwards?
So, first of all, tomorrow King Charles now has to swear affirmations and oaths really to defend the faith, to keep the 1748 Act of the Church of Scotland Proclamation Act. There are several rules and regulations that he has to go through with the Privy Councillors. And then he's already done his TV presentation tonight. From what I'm hearing, he has to fly to Northern Ireland to accept the condolences of Northern Ireland. And then leaders from Wales and from Scotland will then come to sort of see him as well, so that they are all giving condolences to the death of the Queen as well. Then the next stage is that he talks to the Duke of Norfolk, and the Duke of Norfolk is the person who guarantees what the Queen wanted for her funeral happens. Now the reality is that the Queen and the Privy Councillors wrote the funeral for the Queen in 1960s. A long time ago. So one of the questions I was asked on another show this morning was, when is the royal train going to take the coffin from Edinburgh to London?
Yeah.
And it's not. So there's a lot of, apparently it's going to be flown to London now. It will lie in state at Westminster Hall within the confines of Parliament, the Palace of Westminster. And then there will be a few days of lying in state, and then it will be taken to Westminster Abbey, where the funeral, state funeral, will happen. And we expect, but it hasn't been confirmed yet, that the state funeral will happen Monday week. That is when we have the state funeral. So the state funeral, this is a massive, massive, massive headache for security purposes, because really some of the biggest leaders in the world come to London to actually, sort of be part of this funeral. And then afterwards it's taken to St. George's Chapel at Windsor, where Prince Philip is already laid in the crypt. And so then the Queen will lay beside him in the crypt of St. George's Chapel in Windsor. So that really is just a very quick overview, because there is so much ceremony happening. And how it will happen. You will find that if you go to Buckingham Palace over the next few days, early hours of the morning when no one's around, you will find all the troops getting ready and practicing before there's any crowds, because they have to practice, how they're going to do this whole thing as well, because nobody expected this to happen, at this time. There were thoughts that she may be frail, but there was certainly no thoughts that in reality she would pass.
We already have seen in so many lives, as we see now on television, that we have people gathering at Buckingham Palace. Would they be able to pay tributes, as in when the body is in a?
There were books of remembrance and condolence in the four cities. So in Edinburgh, Belfast, and in Northern Ireland, and in Cardiff, as well as in London. So that will be one part of the condolence situation. As I say, the Queen will be lying in state at Westminster Hall for a few days as well, so that people can actually pass by her at the same time. So there are ways for public grief to come out. I suspect, I was up Buckingham Palace today. I've never seen so many people. Obviously, I wasn't at Diana's funeral. I was watching it from America. But the same amount of grief that is now being happening, I think, is very, very similar to Diana's death. And this morning, once I had finished the filming that I'd been doing with TV channels, trying to get through Green Park with what looked like about 500,000 people coming the other way was virtually impossible. So I think the reality at the moment is that there is an increasing amount of grief building up on something like this as well. So we could see a carpet of flowers happening, very similar to the carpet of flowers for Diana. And I think I was talking to one royal follower who has already started camping out today for the funeral in 10 days' time. So there's going to be a lot of people, I think, who will already start camping out, even now, to get the best positions to actually watch the funeral itself.
I would imagine that it's going to be hard work for everybody, but it's going to be a pleasure to do that, because I known only this queen that has ruled for 70 years. And I came in this country in 1992 when everything was in chaos, but she gave me the strength as a woman that you can do anything you have to do if you are given a position. And she has shown for so many years that she can rule and she can lead, even her family and the nations, that she was a leader. I mentioned that when she started as a queen, she had 5 countries in Commonwealth, and now that she passed away, there are more than 56 countries of Commonwealth. What's your view on that?
I mean, anything that brings countries together is good. Charles was made head of the Commonwealth. The Queen wanted Charles to become head of the Commonwealth a few years ago. And that raised some eyebrows because in reality, I think some of the Commonwealth leaders were caught unawares about this. But, you know, that's a side issue. I think that the reality at the moment is, with the passing of the Queen, there may be more feelings on whether or not a royal family has value in Commonwealth countries. We are starting to see this in some of the Caribbean countries that were very strong Commonwealth countries. And when William and Kate visited these countries, yes, they had major problems whilst they were there. They weren't expecting some of the moments of when the crowd almost turned on them in these countries as well. And Charles had to really say sorry to one of the West Indian countries.
We also saw Prince William doing that in Caribbean.
Yeah. So I think they both did it at times as a sense of duty. Well, I don't say, you know, it's going to be a very interesting time. I think the royal family held together during the Queen's reign because nobody could doubt for 1 second the capacity for the Queen to do her duty. She promised at the very start, for however long her life was, she would do her duty, and she did. She kept her word. Now I start to hear issues at times where perhaps Charles may not have the same charisma as the Queen.
What do you think of that one?
I think it's very interesting because there are camps who will never forgive Charles, King Charles now, for the death of Diana. It is, you know, you tend to find ladies in their 50s and 60s, in other words, the era of when Diana really came to power, will never forgive King Charles for this. And the creation of Queen Consort for Camilla may be another, what we say, salt in the wound. Doubt for 1 second.
Excuse me. Sometimes when you try to use the phone, you see, it just doesn't work with you. Yeah, sorry about that, please.
So I think the reality is, I think King Charles has got a lot of work to do in order to gain the same popularity as Queen Elizabeth. It is certainly the end of the second Elizabethan period. The first one, Queen Elizabeth I, was a very, very strong queen, and the Elizabethan era. So now we are going to see a king again, but does he have the same charisma? Does he have the same interest for the people? And I think it is now for the people to decide. Obviously, during a period of mourning, the British people, I think, will follow the mourning of Queen Elizabeth, will they acclaim King Charles is a different matter altogether. So it's going to be a very interesting time for people like myself to actually see how is he perceived in the future.
As we know, there is all the great children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that they're all having the line into the royal family. Now, how is the names changed? You know, the titles they changed, because it's a bit difficult to understand now how they're going to get that.
Okay, so now William will become the Prince of Wales, which is the title that Charles has held whilst waiting to become king. So now that is given to William. So they will become the Prince and Princess of Wales, and that will happen normally at a ceremony in Cardiff itself. I think the other members of the royal family, again, Charles has got all sorts of problems. On the interview or on the broadcast he did tonight, he talked at length about William and Kate, and he also said he loved Harry and Meghan. But
I've heard that, yes.
It was a glancing comment. And of course, Harry has a problem, because there is a new book supposed to be coming out telling the truth behind the royal family. Now, does Harry publish that book still after the death of the Queen? This could be another contentious point at the moment as well over how that might be handled at the same time. I got into severe trouble recently, and I started trending across the world. I trend these days. You know, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. I say something that I think is quite simple, and the next thing you know, I'm trending across the world, and people having a go at me, people who are agreeing with me. It's quite a strange thing, this internet system. And I was very unhappy with how Harry and Meghan were treated during the recent royal celebrations, because I think they were made to look silly. I think the reality as well was that the royal family have done themselves a total disservice. When Meghan came to Britain and she was seen as someone mixed race, the majority of people, Caribbeans, Africans, Asians, at last thought, we have someone who represents us as well. And there was a lot of feeling of love and joy that Meghan was now part of the royal family. When it appears in a lot of eyes that she was pushed out of the way, a lot of the acclamation that the royal family received because of Meghan has dissipated. It's disappeared. And a lot of people of colour will now say that it was a racist act. And so I fight for communities. I fight for the Albanian community,
yes.
And it's very important to me that Albanians feel of great value in Britain. And one of the things I saw recently about Priti Patel talking about getting rid of Albanians in Britain, I think it was absolutely disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. But, you know, right now, I think we need to bring Britain together. Very, very shortly, Britain will be in the worst crisis that there's ever been since the Second World War. If we are not careful, tens of thousands of jobs tens of thousands of businesses could go as well. So we need to bring people together rather than in any way at all make them feel that they are second-class citizens. I have a mantra. My ideology is I want everybody in Britain to feel like a first-class citizen. That's what I want in life. And that's what I fight for in life. and the biggest feminist you'll ever meet, pound for pound. Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ian, I'm going to stop you for 1 minute
Okay.
because I'm going to try to get connected with my colleague Erwin Jonai through Skype and see we can talk together.
Yeah.
Furthermore, Erwin.
Imrama.
Hello. Mirëmbrëma Erwin. Faleminderit shumë që na u bashkangjitje në muhabet. Në studio kam Ian Peltham Turner, si që e njeh edhe ti, kolegun ton. Desha të pyes a do të më bashkangjitesh në muhabet, ta pyesim pak më shumë për këtë ditë të rëndësishme, domethënë këtë kohë të rëndësishme që shkojmë mbas vdekjes të Mbretereshes Elisabeth.
Patjetër. Good evening, Ian.
Ma javesh 1 minutë t'i thëmë regji se nuk e ndëgjoj zërin tënë, vetëm pagës regjia, të lutem. Ma jep 1 minutë. Erwin, mundesh të fillosh të shohim?
Good evening, Ian. Can you hear me now?
Nuk po e ndim, jo.
Hello.
Kur është kështu emisionet live, gjithmonë janë të këndshme këto momentet ku kemi probleme zërimi. Yeah. Ian, I'm introducing to Erwin Jonai, the colleague.
Yes.
Yeah, and we thought let's chat furthermore.
Absolutely.
As I say, when it's live, I love it because we are live and we just technical side doesn't work with us, even though we talk a lot. So, Erwin, të faleminderit shumë, mund të bësh pyetjen, të lutem?
Good evening, Ian. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Well, welcome to our community, Ian. We've expressed our condolences to the Britain for the loss of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. I just want to update you a bit on what's happening in Albania. They have, the British Embassy have opened now the doors for people to express their condolences. The President has already expressed his condolences today, and also other leaders of political parties will follow. There are also members of public there, which are sending flowers. They already started putting the flowers outside the embassy. And it's quite a sad news, especially parts of towns where they have a large community here, immigrants, which they migrated from northern part of Albania, for example, which is a small town called Has. And they've already, before that this happened, they've already asked the British authorities in Albania to install a bust of Elizabeth II in their city. I think the permit has given, and the bust will go. The installation of the bust will go ahead. I don't know when, but the mayor of the city has already started the work. So we will have a bust of Elizabeth II in Albania. I mean, coming back to in Britain, the company I work for, Sir Robert McAlpine, they are doing some work at the Buckingham Palace. Hence the reason Queen has been living at the Balmoral Palace in a couple of months, because the palace is undergoing refurbishment. But however, the palace is back now to normal because of the company has already brought the palace back to normal for the funeral to take place, and some of the majority of the palace is back to normal. It's sad because of Queen was so interested on the refurbishment of the palace. She herself was quite involved with what was going to refurb in the palace. But sad days. Now King Charles will be living in the palace until that. I would just want to touch base a bit with Ian in the future now of the kingdom. It will be interesting to see the future starting from, let's say, the funeral where the leaders of the world will come and to pay their condolences to the British It would be interesting if anyone from Moscow will arrive to the United Kingdom, knowing the situation and the relation right now with Moscow. I do believe it could be an opportunity to build again the bridges with Moscow. But I'm not aware of or anyone arriving yet from Moscow in the country. So that's why I just wanted to ask Ian if it's anything he knows anything about building again the relationship with Russia.
I mean, the first thing I would say, what surprised me, that Putin, I should say, sent his condolences to the royal family on the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Now, bearing in mind we are fighting Russian oppression at the moment as well, I wondered where that was coming from. Would Putin be allowed to come to London as part of the funeral procession or part of the leaders? That is a very interesting question. I would imagine President Biden will be here, and even the Ukrainian Prime Minister or leader could come as well, you know, because to lay condolences, obviously because we have supported Ukraine now, and probably one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine at the same time. You know, my feeling, because I've got a lot of Ukrainian friends at the moment, and I've got a lot of Albanian friends as well, is, you know, in reality, wars don't make any realities. The only realities that wars make is to put it into the pockets of warmongers. So I don't see personally, I can understand in some ways that Putin wants to go back to the old days of the USSR. But I was, as a younger journalist, I was one of the first journalists, Western journalists, to be allowed into Moscow and Russia after Perestroika. And I worked for probably over 2 years going in and out of Moscow at the same time. And my feeling is, you see, people don't make wars. Politicians make wars. People don't make wars. And when I was in Russia, they were probably the nicest people I think you could ever find. It's the same with Albanians. You know, this fear of Albanians, you know, coming over and creating warlords in Britain is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And you know, I wish we could learn more from Albanians, for example, and the family philosophies of Albanians, because I feel that you have a much closer philosophy in life from how I was brought up in the 1950s. So I felt, when I first got embraced with the Albanian culture, I felt very at home. I felt very at home altogether. And so it was a culture that I could sort of see was very close to my own culture growing up in the 1950s. And I think, you see, the reality at the moment is, you can't ask Muscovites how do they think of the war, because, you know, if they say something that is dissension, the reality is they could be carted off to jail or even worse at the moment. So how do you deal with a situation like that? You know, I think it is very, very hard to sort of deal with or something like that. So will Putin be allowed to come to London? You know, I mean, anything is possible. You know, I never thought 2 days ago that the Queen was going to die. You know, so the thing that I rapidly have to remember again is anything is possible at any time. And because apart from the royal family, I also specialise in British politics. Anything can happen. And I worked behind the scenes at Number 10, you know, for several years as well, with ideologies. So, you know, behind the scenes, anything can happen at any time is the answer. But will Putin be allowed to the funeral?
Still
That
is a
could be-
puzzle for you and maybe all the information.
Absolutely.
I have a question also. Now that King Charles is still a little bit difficult to say about the name, when the money and everything that we have, a Queen's photographs, what is going to happen? Is that going to change?
Yes, I mean, I would imagine over a period of time again, a new image will be encrypted onto coinage. It is, you know, that will be a question for the future. At the moment, yes, I mean, it's normal that the monarch's face appears on the coinage of the country itself. So that's the tradition. When that starts to happen, you know, that's way above my pay grade. You know.
So it's good you don't know. It hasn't been talked about it a lot. So let's hope whoever's got cash piled on is going to take a little bit longer until you kind of get rid of it or invest in something.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think the people who may be hoarding some banknotes under the bed, you know,
you better spend it now.
I'd better spend it now.
That is going to come. Ian, thank you very much for your time that you have spent. You know, you dedicated a bit of time knowing that you spent 24 hours now constantly from one television to another, and you have honored us to come and speak a little bit and commemorate the time of the Queen that has done so much, not only for Britain, for everybody, for the community, and for everybody in the world. We all have different views and how we perceive, but in general, she was one of the leaders that I'm very proud to be in the country that I work with rules that she has set up for everybody.
Can I say, it's an honour to be here. It's an honour to know you. I've known you for several years now, and we get on tremendously well. ALB UK TV is a tremendous station. It has challenges that you know, I've had to sort of deal with.
Like a queen has in her kingdom. So we have our kingdom in LAB that we have to deal with the challenges.
Absolutely. So, but in reality, I am such an admirer of Albania, Albanian people. You know, I thought at one time, you know, I wanted to sort of have a home by the seaside in Albania. You know, I had this vision of having a flat. The reality is, I think Albanian people, Kosovo, you know, the whole area, bring so much to Britain. And that's the message that should be coming across. And the Priti Patels of this world, who are only just trying to save their jobs, and she didn't, should not be saying things that are derogatory to the Albanian people.
Thanks God it did not last long, and we are continuing our lives and showing ourselves that we are young people. We want to live and have a good lives, and we want to learn, and we can be part of any community if
Absolutely.
the chance is given to us.
Absolutely.
It's not just all bad news. You have so many intellectuals out there that thrive at the moment everywhere in the world.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time. I will continue my conversation with my colleagues, my colleague Erwin, so we can talk a little bit in Albanian for whatever we have spoken in English. And thank you for the time, and we shall see you again in other programs.
Thank you.
Miq të dashur, filloj tani mohabetin me kolegun tim Erwinin. Erwin, je kam ndëgjon tash?
Patjetër.
Po. Është një ditë vërtet e vështirë, e mërzitshme për të gjithë ata. Unë personalisht në vitin 1992 kam ardhur në Britani edhe prej atëherë e njoh ndoshta vetëm epokën e Mbretereshës Elisabeth II. E përmenda në fillim pak jetën e saj, vetëm një histori e vogël në pika të shkurta, po momentalisht ti e përmende se edhe në Shqipëri po bëhen disa shërbime në nder të mbretëreshës. A mundesh vetëm pakës na tregosh se çka është duke ndodhur në Shqipëri tani?
Në Shqipëri, në Kotës, i drejtohen ambasadës britanike për të kryer homazhe si liderët e vendeve përkatëse, por edhe qytetarët, të cilët është një libër për ngushëllimet, po ashtu dhe për një pjesë ambasadës, një mur i ambasadës për të vendosur lulet apo dhe mesazhe ngushëllimi. Kjo tashmë ka filluar në Shqipëri, kishte që sot presidenti i Shqipërisë adresuar në ambasadë dhe bëri ngushëllimet përkatëse ambasadorit apo të detyrues ambasadës në ambasadën britanike në Shqipëri. Në shumicën e vendeve do të bëhet, nuk në disa vende ndoshta konfliktuale me Britaninë mund të mos ketë këtë lloj impakt apo reagimi siç ka pasur në Shqipëri që la vjen. Në Shqipëri është ndier pak dhimbja e humbjes së Mbretereshës, për arsye sepse ne kemi një komitet goxha të madh këtu dhe kuptohet jetesa e shqiptarët kanë rritur të bëjnë jetesë shumë të mirë këtu dhe të ndihmojnë dhe familjarët në Shqipëri. Është ndihet pak çdo gjë që ndodh në Britani përjetohet edhe në Shqipëri, në komitet. Ashtu siç e preka pak më parë në anglisht, por në Shqipëri kryetari i bashkisë së Hasit ka kërkuar leje për të vendosur bustin e Mbretereshës në Has, i cila leja më duket se është dhënë. Dhe pritet që të vendoset busti i Mbretereshës pasi të mbarohet punimi. Kjo është sponsorizuar vetëm nga emigrantët. Pra në Has është një qytet shumë e vogël, por ka popullsinë më të madhe të emigrantëve jashtë dhe më të madhe në Britani. Flasim për numrin e banorëve. Pra është pothuajse që zona ka një emigrant 100% e zonës ka një emigrant në Britani. Çka e bën më tërheqëse zonën për Britaninë. Unë kur isha në Shqipëri para ca ditësh, unë kalova në Has dhe atje ndihet pjesa britanike, kanë filluar edhe ca këto ndërtimet pak a shumë të marrin një stil të Britanisë. Po ndiej shumë afrimiteti me Britaninë. Pra kishin e shohin Britaninë si rrugëzirjen kryesore të problemeve të tyre. Kjo për Shqipërinë, domthonë në Shqipëri është ndier pak. Për komunitetin shqiptar këtu, unë vetë personalisht kam ndier një lloj keqardhje, është një ditë e zezë për Britaninë, dhe për familjen mbretërore. Ajo kishte një moshë 96 vjeçare. Është diçka e papratshme, por është dhimbje që shkakton një humbje e tillë. Unë mbaj në 2002-shin, kur vdiq nëna Mbreteresh, unë kam qenë këtu dhe itinerari i kalimit të kortezhit kalonte në rrugën ku unë jetoja atë në afër Hammersmith dhe ishte gjithë popullata ishte jashtë në rrugë dhe kam qenë dhe vetë prezent duke parë kortezhin që kalonte. Kjo më krijoi një farë impakti, domosdoshmë ishte diçka shumë e bukur, ishte diçka shumë e mirë organizuar, komplet kortezhi i nënës Mbreteresh, që ishte diçka që e jashtëzakonshme për të parë, sidomos nga unë që vjen nga një vend që këto gjëra nuk edhe nëse kishe një mort shtetëror, një lider shtetëror, këto gjëra nuk organizohen në kaq detaje dhe në kaq më të arrira. Dhe krijon atë impaktin e parë me familjen mbretërore, duke qenë se ke një formë respekti ndaj familjes. Pastaj jeta tjetër është sepse ky vend tashmë është për vendim, kështu që unë ndiej detyrën time si qytetari i këtij vendi, si shtetës i këtij vendi, që të pushlloj familjen mbretërore dhe të të respektoj zinë që do mbahet këto 10 ditë. Në kompaninë time ku unë punoj, fjala vjen janë vendos disa mesazhe që janë dhënë nëpërmjet kompanisë që do të do të vazhdoj procedurat e mbajtjes së zisë sipas protokollit shtetëror apo itinerari që cakton shteti. Mund do të ketë një minutë ose disa minuta heshtje në zyrë dhe mund të ketë edhe ditë pushimi, ditën që mund të bëhet varrimi i mbretëreshës. Pra, sepse kompania ka disa projekte që i përkasin pallateve të familjes mbretërore, është vendosur që të kemi edhe një ditë pushimi ndoshta në ardhmen. Kjo nuk është e caktuar saktë, por dhe kushdo që ka dëshirë që të marrë pjesë në të gjitha evenimentet që ndodhin, pra të shkosh në Buckingham Palace apo të shkruash tek libri i kondolencave, ngushëllimeve apo vetë kur të jetë arkivoli në pallat për publikun, pra na vazhdon leja që të shkojmë pa asnjë lloj problemi, domosdoshmë nuk është nevojshme që të kërkojmë leje për të marrë. Kështu që janë momente të vështira për familjen, ndoshta për ne jo pa aq shumë, po është një ditë keqardhje e madhe për gjithë ne shqiptarët. Ne shqiptarët kemi ardhur këtu, kemi gjetur një vend shumë të mirë, një vend kemi arritur shumë dhe mendoj që kemi detyrime që të respektojmë vendin ku jemi dhe të përgjigjemi itinerarit apo ditëve të zisë që janë shpallur në Britani. Çfarë do të mbajë ardhmja
Gjithsesi Ervin, shumë mirë e thënë, ne duhet ta respektojmë, po dhe besoj se do ta respektojmë, pasi që shumica prej neve e kemi gjetur shtëpinë e dytë. Për atë dhe jemi shumë vite në këtë vend, e kemi pa mënyrën se si çmohemi si komb, si qenje njerëzore, po gjithashtu edhe për aftësinë që mund të jemi lider, mund të jemi njerëz inteligjent dhe intelektual, po ashtu edhe shumë punëtor.
Patjetër, ky vend ka dhënë hapësira për gjithë ne. Domethënë, i kemi shqiptarët tashmë në të gjitha instancat, po thua që punojnë në shtet, kandidojnë në për partitë politike dhe për zgjedhje si lokale, ndoshta të ardhmen mund të kandidojnë edhe në parlament. Pra, jap hapësirat nga të marrësh drejtimet të drejtosh në shtet, por edhe kudo në sektorin privat, fjala vjen ku shqiptarët po japin një kontribut të jashtëzakonshëm dhe janë të gjithë me punë të jashtëzakonisht shumë të mira. Kjo vjen si pasojë edhe vetë Britanisë, e cila i ka bërë të mundur këtë lloj jetese për gjithë ata që vinë këtu. Ne si emigrant që jemi, fjala vjen për nga Shqipëria, që kemi emigruar në Greqi dhe në Itali, ne emigrantët që janë në Greqi dhe në Shqipëri nuk i kanë këto hapësira që krijon Britania. Pra ne jemi me fat që jemi në Britani dhe jemi me fat që kjo drejtuese e këtij shteti, fjala janë 70 vjet që ka drejtuar, ka qenë kreu i shtetit, ka ndërtuar një shtet i cili ne na ka mirëpritur, jo vetëm që na ka mirëpritur këtu, por kontributin që ka dhënë Britania për luftën në Kosovë dhe për shlirimin e pavarësinë e Kosovës është një borxh që ne nuk mund t'ja shlyejmë dot kollaj.
Vërtet ajo që the. Një pyetje tjetër e kam mendimin tënë. Çka mendon se mbreti Charles i treti tani do të jetë? Si do të jetë fronti i tij në vitet që do të vinë?
Mbreti aktualisht mban postin e kreut të shtetit në Britani. Pra ka një post, nuk është thjesht figurë siç është një mbretëri në fjala vjen në Spanjë apo në vende të tjera që nuk ka atë impakt të madh siç e ka në Britani. Nuk do ta ketë shumë të lehtë, do ta ketë shumë të vështirë për një arsye të vetme, sepse nëna e tij apo padria e saj Elisabeta ka çdua 70 vjet në tim të vendit. Që ka një tjetër 70 vjet nuk është pak, është shumë. Qëndrosh lider drejtosh në vend. Dhe ta marrë dikush tjetër mbas 70 vjetësh është shumë e vështirë që të krijojë ai impaktin e tij. Ka një punë shumë të madhe për të bërë përpara. Se sa do të arrijë nuk e di, domethënë nuk është se e merr dhe pak mbretërinë në një moshë vetaj 70 vjeç. Pra, a do të ketë forcën apo të thush pak rinin që t'i hyje punëve me zell edhe ti dalë me sukses, nuk e di. Është për të parë në muajt edhe në vitin që vjen. Ai ka një detyrë shumë të madhe para tij, është që të mbajë mbretërinë të bashkuar, duke parë që tani që sot kanë filluar si Australia apo disa vende të tjera kanë filluar që të hedhin ato shkëndijtë. Këto shkëndijtë të para nuk është se kanë ndonjë vlerë të madhe, janë dhe shkëndijtë që përdoren për kapitale politike, por janë indicie të vogla që tregojnë që ky nuk do të ketë një drejtim të lehtë në mbretërinë për mbretërinë që vjen. Në publik është i ndarë publiku, kjo është fakt për ta thënë. Publiku është shumë i ndarë për sa i përket King Charles apo mbreti Charles, sepse siç dihet domethënë martesa e Medianën, ndarja, fatkeqësia që ndodhi Dianës, rimartesa e këtij me Kamilën, duke qenë sepse Kamila ishte dhe arsyeja e ndarjes princeshës, ka një efekt në publik. Nuk është aq shumë i pranueshëm sa që ishte nëna e tij dhe aq sa është i pranueshëm djali i tij. Që është brenda një ekuacioni që vetëm ky mund ta zgjidh dhe vetëm ky mund t'i japi një drejtim që të jetë në krahun e tij, por nuk është e pamundur që mund të aktualisht që mund të japë një mendim të saktë.
Ervin, të faleminderit shumë për kohën tënde. Do ta përmbyllim vetëm me një mesazh nga ne shqiptarët në Britani. Të faleminderit shumë Mbretëresha Elisabeth për frontin tën, leadershipin tën dhe për energjinë që ke dhënë me gjitha dinjitet që na ke bërë neve të ndihemi si në shtëpinë tonë. Faleminderit shumë Ervin, do shihemi në emisionet e ardhshme së bashku në Albi UK TV.
Faleminderit dhe natën e mirë.
Ndërsa shikues të nderuar, ju faleminderit shumë për vëmendjen tuaj. Ju mirëpresim të na shikoni në emisionet e radhës të televizionit Albi UK TV. Mirupafshim.
Shtëpia është aty, ku zemra rreh. Aty ku më presin sy të gëzuar me padurim, çdo herë që kthehem në vendin tim. Largimi është gjithmonë i vështirë, ndaj sigurohem të jem aty në ditët më të rëndësishme për ta. Me EasyPay dhe Ria Money Transfer, unë dërgoj para me tarifat më të lira kudo në Shqipëri.
Daja, po ti s'do vish për diklinën time?
Nuk mund të vi dot sot, por të kam sjell një surprizë që do të pëlqej shumë.
Nuk ka gjë më të bukur se sa të gëzosh njerëzit e tu më të dashur. EasyPay dhe Ria Money Transfer dërgojnë para aty ku vërtet ka rëndësi.